If you've ever watched your kiddo struggle to figure out why other kids won't share their Legos, or why sarcasm flies over their little head like a rogue Nerf dart, this next resource is going to make your jaw drop. Meet Michelle Garcia Winter. She's not just a speech and language pathologist, with a master's degree. She's the CEO and founder of the Social Thinking Methodology, and a total game changer in how kids, and let's be real, parents too, learn the unspoken rules of social life. Michelle specializes in social cognition, basically the brain's people skills, and she's built tools, strategy, and resources that help our ADHD kiddos crack the code on friendships, conversations, and self-regulation without making them feel broken or less than. If your child struggles with reading the room, making friends, or handling the roller coaster of social life, Michelle's work is a lifeline. You can learn more at socialthinking.com, or you can click the link in the podcast description, because thriving socially isn't about faking normal, it's about understanding it. If you're listening to this podcast because your kiddo got diagnosed with ADHD, and somewhere between the IEP meetings, the late night Google spirals, and the why does everything feel so damn hard moments, you quietly realized, oh no, this isn't just my kid. This is me. Yeah, same. So many ADHD moms don't discover their own ADHD until they're knee-deep in advocating for their children, because suddenly all the pieces click. The overwhelm, the burnout, the emotional explosions, the chronic exhaustion masked as just motherhood. And today's guest, she gets it. Not academically, not theoretically, but personally and professionally. Tracy Otsuka is an ADHD coach, speaker, and host of the ADHD for Smartass Women podcast. And she specializes in working with women who've spent their lives being told they're too much, too sensitive, or so capable if only they could get it together. She helps women with ADHD stop fighting their brains, stop internalizing shame, and finally build lives that actually work for them. Not some neurotypical Pinterest version of womanhood we were never meant to fit into. This episode is for the moms who are holding it all together on the outside while absolutely unraveling on the inside. For the moms who love their kids fiercely but are realizing they've never been taught how to support themselves. And for the women who are finally ready to say, I'm not broken. I'm wired differently and I deserve support too. Let's welcome Tracy to the mic. Tracy, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle. I am so happy to be here.
I am happy to have you. I am going to try to not fangirl all over you for the 45 minutes and actually get some stuff accomplished. So you have worn so many hats over the years. I would love to hear the unfiltered, not so humble version of who you are and how you got here.
Well, I am, what do they call it? Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. There's a term for women who've been diagnosed with ADHD after a child was diagnosed. And it'll come to me, but I'm going to start this podcast in full living glory so you can see exactly how my brain works. So my son was really struggling he did really great until fourth grade. And then fourth grade, he just started to struggle. And we had no idea what could it be because we knew how bright he was. And we could see that sometimes he'd get A's and other times he'd get F's. Well, usually it was D's, C's and D's in the same subject, an occasional F, in the same week. And we're like, what is going on here? And so over a couple of years, we had him tested for all different kinds of things. We paid thousands of dollars for vision therapy, because they said, oh, it's an audio processing, a visual processing thing. It's, his vision. And nothing ever, it would just be ups and downs. And it kind of depended on what teacher he had, what teacher he didn't have. And then finally, someone recommended go get a full battery neuropsych evaluation. And so we did that. And it came back that my son had ADHD. And I was like, there's no way. ADHD means you're not very smart, you're all over the place, and you're just not destined for any kind of success. And my son was nothing if not ambitious and driven. And, man, when he was interested in something, he would learn everything. Like his two areas of interest were baseball. And he knew every stat from every player who had ever played the game from the beginning of time. And then the other one was World War II. Actually, it was probably World War I and World War II. And again, he knew all of the stats. He knew everything that happened, every single battle. And so it didn't make sense. So we ended up going to a psychologist who came highly referred. We really respected the people who referred her. And she sat us down. We had 3 meetings with her. One was just my son, one was our entire family, and then just my husband and me. And the last one, it was my husband and me. And she said, your job as his parent is to reduce his expectations because he is far too ambitious and he is just going to be disappointed in life. And I remember looking at my husband and thinking, are you friggin' kidding me? That is the last thing I would do. I don't care if my son was intellectually disabled. Why in the world would you lower their expectations of themselves? Yeah. So needless to say, we walked out and never went back. I didn't like that woman to begin with. She was harassing my kids because they were kind of pushing each other and joking around. And she's, we do not do that here. And I'm like, lighten up, Frances. Like, get a sense of humor. Like, what is your problem? And I'm feeling sorry for her kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, I started to do the research and it was for him. And it took me 8 months of learning for him for me to finally turn the lens on myself and say, oh, crap. He got his ADHD from me because ADHD looks so different in women than it looks in boys and men.
Yeah.
Not always, but often. And I will say I am very hyperactive. There are women that are purely inattentive. So all of the hyperactivity is happening in their brain. They turn inwards, they, beat themselves up, and they often get diagnosed with anxiety and depression, bipolar disorder, instead of ADHD. And sometimes they have a little bit of one of those other ones or all of them.
Yeah.
But often it's the ADHD that drives all the other behaviors and, the way they feel. So I just started to do more research about women. And, the 2 things that really made a difference for me was drivenness is a form of hyperactivity. A lot of women, we grow up being people pleasers. We want to be the good girl. And so what we do is everything to make everybody else happy. And that includes our teachers. So we are actually brilliant students. And we learn that, if I do well in school, I get all of this positive emotion. So I'm going to do whatever I can to do well in school. Now, some women, men too, they can work as hard as they can, but they're so brilliant and so creative that school is just never going to be their area of brilliance. So, the long and short of it is you meet one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. Yeah. We all have this brain of interest in common. So when we are interested in something, the sky's the limit. But when we are not interested, we can't even get out of our own way. And so it's that disconnect of consistent inconsistency that we really struggle with. And I should probably tell you, because I'm assuming there are women listening to your show and they're thinking either there's no way, I don't have ADHD, I'm not interested. Or there's women who are thinking, well, maybe I do, but I'm not really sure. So I would love to be able to share the 3 telltale signs with you because It's not what we're normally taught, right?
Yeah.
We are normally taught that it's the hyperactive boy who is annoying to his teachers, parents, all the adults in his life, his coaches. And then as he grows up, his partner, spouse, whatever. And so because they're so annoying, they get the services. And that's what you hear about in school. Yeah. Versus in girls, as I said, I didn't say this, 75% of us are undiagnosed. And a big part of that is because we have 2 times the rate of inattentive ADHD, 2 times the rate of inattention. And that looks like, for women, the absent-minded professor. She is brilliant in her area, but just day-to-day life, not so much. She's kind of a mess. In school, it looks like the little girl sitting in the back of the classroom in her own little fairy tale, daydreamy, life. She's just creating this life.
Yes.
And she doesn't even remember she's in school, let alone what subject she's in, until her teacher calls on her, and then it's like, ah. And so when you have inattentive ADHD, you tend to internalize, and women do this too, internalize their symptoms, versus boys externalize their symptoms. They get in fights, they talk back, they're loud, they're obnoxious. And so again, they get the services, girls internalize, we beat ourselves up. And so then we're diagnosed with anxiety and depression instead of ADHD. One of the other differences is girls are diagnosed later. They typically are diagnosed in puberty, or they start seeing symptoms in puberty. And that is because what we now know is estrogen modulates dopamine. So where you are going to see a lot of these ADHD symptoms come up is puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause. And I realize, Danielle, with my ADHD brain, I started talking about the 3 telltale signs, and all of a sudden I got into ADHD in women. So let me and then I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to listen to your next question. The 3 telltale signs, number 1, would be unexplained underachievement. So you meet someone and they're so bright, but they just have not achieved what you can see what their potential is, and they just have not lived up to their potential. Number 2 is that consistent inconsistency. Often we can do the hard stuff really, really well, but it's the everyday boring stuff, keeping a house, making sure your kids' paperwork signed, making sure they've got their lunch, making sure, there's dinner. It's like Groundhog Day, right? These things just happen time after time after time, day after day, and they just never go away. So those kinds of things we kind of can suck at. The other thing is we can be consistently inconsistent, like my son, where, as I mentioned, he would get A's and sometimes F's in the same subject in the same week. And so it doesn't make sense. And so what the teachers and the parents will say is, you just need to try harder because I know you can do it. I can see how smart you are, right? Yeah. And then the third one is typical tips and tricks, productivity type tips and tricks just do not work for us. Things like eat that frog, where you're supposed to do the hardest thing first thing in the morning, like hell. Like there's no way I can do the hardest thing first thing in the morning. I'm kind of like an airplane. I have to get up off the runway. That's how dopamine works, which is what our brains don't make enough of. And once I can get up and I can do the little thing, like the lowest hanging fruit, that gives me a little bit more dopamine. Then I can do the next hardest thing and then the next hardest thing. And it works like that. So time blocking is another thing. These people, and sometimes you can do it with ADHD. Sometimes when there's ADHD and some autism, which is a very common, comorbidity. I hate that word, but it means that you've got a little bit of both of them. Yeah. Sometimes you can do the time blocking where you literally will plan your whole schedule out for, like a month. But most of us with purely ADHD look at that and say, are you kidding me? I don't even know what I'm going to want to do tomorrow. How am I supposed to know what I'm going to want to do for the whole week? I can't. It's too much emotion. It makes me feel too uncomfortable. So that was a lot, Danielle, that I threw at you.
Well, thank you for everything. On this podcast, we're not allowed to say perimenopause because I just turned 40. So yeah. That evil beast, we're going to leave her where she is. And if you bring up her name, then she'll show up and derail my life.
Some women, though, go into perimenopause in their 30s?
Yeah. Yeah, she for sure said that I'm probably already there. I just am probably ADHD and all over the place and haven't even realized that things have shifted. But one day it'll be like the smack in the face, like, oh, yeah, I have that.
Yeah, but the thing is you've grown up at such a great time because I would say the last 2 years, it used to be nobody talked about menopause, nobody talked about perimenopause. Like
Yeah.
my mother never made a peep about it.
Yeah.
I knew she had been on the hormones that, they so just yanked out from under her in 2002, and it really changed her life.
Yeah.
The hormones did in a good way, but within the last 2 years, like everybody's talking about menopause. It's like the new thing, right? So
Yeah.
there's going to be so much more research and all of it. And
Yeah.
it's so much better now because we actually talk about it.
Yes. Yes. So, okay, you can say it. You can say the P word here on the podcast. Okay. I want to know what it was like for you in that moment when you realized, oh my gosh, I have ADHD.
So I was not, a lot of women feel shame around it and they feel grief, because, oh my gosh, I wish that I would have known what I would have done differently. I didn't have any of that. I always knew my brain was different. I always knew my brain could be unreliable. I always knew, Danielle, I have the worst working memory of anyone you will ever meet. And I was a lawyer. And so I wanted to become a criminal lawyer, but I realized early on, I just I I'm one of those people that over prepares, and I over prepare because I can never really rely on my brain and my memory. So I knew, a criminal lawyer where, oh, there's a new piece of evidence and you put it all together. And I can put it all together really quickly at times, but I never quite know when that brilliant brain is going to show up. If there's too much anxiety, then everything shuts down, right? Because that's how our brain works. And, the prefrontal cortex, which is where, dopamine, we need dopamine and we don't have enough.
Yeah.
So there are some women with ADHD that I've met that have brilliant working memory. But in general, most of us struggle with that. So it was finally a reason, because I would work so hard and I had these crazy ways that I would study and these just nutty, how I took notes, especially in law school. And so everybody would study from my notes that I had literally been working for weeks on. They would study for a couple days and then it never failed. Like I had this one roommate, really, really bright roommate. I did a master's in law after law school at Georgetown. And so we were roommates and she was already a partner when she came to the program. She's just a really bright woman. But I always thought, she would take my notes and then she'd do a half a grade higher than me. It never failed. And she wasn't even studying. And so I always thought, well, that must mean that I'm just not smart. And so I grew up and went through decades of my life thinking, you have to work harder, you have to be more prepared because you're not as smart. And finally knowing it was ADHD and learning what ADHD looked like, that actually gave me a lot of confidence because I realized, no, it's not that. And as much as I say, I thought, oh, you're not as smart. I knew I was smart, right? And I knew I was a different kind of smart than a lot of people. Like I was always the perfectionism, right? Good enough. Literally my motto was good enough isn't, which is sick. And my kids hated it. Now it's good enough is,
Yeah.
But because I just always, everything had to be better. Excellence was always, my moniker. And that can be good if it's excellence, but if it runs into perfectionism, there's no such thing as perfect, right? There's always a way to make things better. And so you do have to get to the point where, okay, that's good enough. I'm just going to go with it because otherwise, you're just stuck in this never doing anything, never getting anything done. And what I noticed with my hyperactivity and my kind of brain, when I was in action, I felt better because I wasn't in my brain ruminating. I was actually getting things done. And when you get things done, you get real world experience, and often the world reacts and says, oh, that's really good. And that is what actually gives you confidence. You did the scary thing and you didn't die.
Yeah.
So it explained everything for me. And I was just really grateful for the diagnoses.
I think that that's the first time that I've heard it that way. I think most of us have the original, what you said, man, if I had known that, what would I have done different? But there's no need in dwelling on it. You know, it's gone, and let's move forward with what we've got and thankful that it's here. I like that.
But I do want to acknowledge a couple things. I did not have, none of us get through life without some trauma, right? But I didn't have the kind of trauma, there was no violence. There was no divorce in my family. We didn't struggle with, my dad was a dentist. Like, I had so much privilege. And so I want to acknowledge, and I had parents who provided so much structure. When I started to struggle in junior high school, they pulled me out of school and put me into a private school, into a Catholic school, which I have comments about that. But what I will say about Catholic education is there's so much structure, right? There's so many systems. And that was really helpful to my brain. So I learned, and I danced ballet literally 6 days a week, which, totally helped with the dopamine, right? Because we know that exercise is as effective as 20 minutes at your high heart rate is as effective as a course of Adderall and Prozac. So I am certain that helped to change my brain. So again, I learned early on, because I was a people pleaser, that if I work really hard, I would get accolades for that. And so that kind of taught me to keep working hard. And so I was able to achieve when many ADHD women who have boatloads of childhood trauma, which is very common, they're in that survival mode, not feeling safe. And so I want to make it clear that I had so many benefits. But just because I had those benefits does not mean that you can't achieve everything that you want to achieve regardless. Those are all, we need therapy, right? We need to learn how to feel safe, but then it really is just about getting into action and building confidence and learning how to trust yourself. Because so many ADHD women, they fall into this learned helplessness where, well, if I'm constantly picked on for how I do things and what works for my brain, screw it. I'm just not going to do anything. Tell me what to do, right? And then they allow the whole world to tell them what to do. So guess what? You're living their life, not your life. And you can do that for a while, but starting about your 40s, everything's going to fall apart because you realize that I'm not authentic to who I am. I'm being who everybody else wants me to be.
And here comes the midlife crisis. No, I'm just kidding. But kind of, it makes sense if we are, I think around this age, around my age, 40, that so much comes into focus. And then you're like, hold on. I think I actually have a couple of friends who are heading on that wake up moment of like, oh my gosh, so I'm looking forward to that for them.
Well, and I can tell you that wake up moment, neurotypical women struggle with it often. Women with ADHD, the reason we struggle so much with, that midlife, kids going off to college or going off to work, is because we are so mission driven. If we can't do work that makes a difference to us, that is surrounding our intention and our purpose for being on this earth, we are miserable. We just can't just go along and do what society says women are supposed to do, which is bear kids, be good moms, and then and kind of be quiet. We're not like that. We have to feel like we're living to our potential.
If 2025 felt like one long game of whose executive function died today, welcome to the club. But 2026, we are not doing another year of white knuckling it through school mornings, emotional avalanches, and the mystery of why a simple worksheet can turn into a full-blown family crisis. This is the year we get help from people who actually get ADHD. And that's exactly where Hallowell Todaro comes in. Their team doesn't just treat symptoms. They understand the full picture, the wiring, the emotions, the chaos, the strengths, all of it. Their approach is compassionate, science-backed, empowering, and honestly, a breath of oxygen for burned out parents who are tired of feeling like they're failing. From diagnostic clarity to individualized treatment plans, coaching, therapy, and support that actually works in real life, not just on paper, Hallowell Todaro gives families the tools to regulate, connect, and finally feel hope again. So, here's to New Year, less chaos, and partnering with experts who make ADHD feel less like a daily disaster and more like a journey we can navigate with confidence. Can we be honest for a second? If the words school stress make your eye twitch, same. Because traditional school plus ADHD plus already fried nervous systems, phew, that's chaos we did not sign up for. That's why I love Me Academy. It's an online learning platform that lets kids learn at their own pace. No rushing, fewer power struggles, and way fewer homework meltdowns. Yes, please. As a mom, I love that it offers structure without rigidity and learning without wrecking our relationship with our kids. They can rewind lessons, pause when their brain taps out, and actually understand the material. If your 2026 goal is less chaos and more peace, this one actually delivers. Check out meacademy.co to learn more and start your trial for just $1.99. Me Academy isn't about perfect school. It's about school that works for real life. Ooh, girl, I think you just said a mouthful because before my kiddo hits college, I need to find another another purpose there, another driving factor for me.
Well, and you're doing a lot of that, even just with this podcast, right? That is
Sure.
the reason you started it. And so what I will say is once ADHD women discover the sweet spot between what is it that they really value, what are their natural born strengths that they're using right now and they need to use more of because that's how they move in the world. What are the talents that they, came out of the womb, they built skills around and turned into superpowers? Which of the many passions that you have is the passion? And then where's the purpose? Like the sweet spot between all of that. Once we know that and we're clear, we do things faster and better than anyone. Yeah. I am always in shock by the women that we work with who they find that sweet spot and all of a sudden 6 months later, they are just blowing up and doing big things because our entire life we've been wondering, okay, who am I and what am I supposed to do with my life? I know, and women aren't supposed to say this, but most of us have this feeling of, I just know I'm meant to do something big. I know I'm meant to do something important. And so once you figure out what that is and you finally understand how your brain works and why you need to do that thing, everything else kind of falls off and you start doing even just a little every day, a little tiny bit of it. You don't die every day. You grow, you get more confident, you do more, you really start to trust yourself. And it just happens so fast. So what I will say is, and I mean this sincerely, 40 for an ADHD woman is literally like toddler years. Most ADHD women that I have had the privilege of working with are in their 50s when they just start blowing everything up. I saw a statistic recently that, so girls have tons of confidence and then they head into puberty and their confidence just plummets. And that's exactly when boys' confidence starts growing. And so the confidence kind of limps along. And then around 50, all of a sudden women's confidence goes up again and men's start to plummet. So
interesting. I will say this is supposed to be like the dreaded decade, like
no.
Some dread their 30s. That didn't really bother me. But everybody's like, oh my gosh, aren't you afraid to turn 40? And I'm like, absolutely not. This is my favorite time that I've ever lived. I know who I am. I know what I want. And it's been an amazing ride just to get here. So no, I'm not afraid of this decade. Yeah. But now that you've said that, I am looking forward to my 50s.
Yes, exactly. And I think especially for those of us parents, mothers who really loved being a parent, like there is nothing that is ever going to match those baby and yeah, every year I loved more.
Yeah.
And then for me, the big wake up call was there were two things. Seeing that my kids, this goes so fast.
Mm.
Um, and seeing that my kids I live in California, my kids live in New York City, and they both ended up going to school on the East Coast. And my daughter, she is in her third year, she just started her third year of law school, and she's going to be an entertainment lawyer. And so she has two options, New York or LA. And I honestly would rather be in New York than LA. Nothing against LA, but it's the stimulation in New York that I just love New York City.
Yeah.
And my son, we'll see what's going to happen, but he just started his first job out there, well, last October, almost a year. And he's killing it. And now he's thinking he wants to go to med school, but he doesn't have the classes. And so he's going to have to do a post-bac med school. This is my son who, the director of his second high school told us there's nothing more they can do for him. So, it's like once he got into the real world and his income is unlimited, I think that was the big key. And he realizes he can just work as hard as he wants. He's on fire. Yeah. But I started to see all this and I thought, first of all, I'm not going to have them in the house, which makes me really sad because my kids are like, literally, my husband and my kids, I wouldn't want to be around. They are my favorite people. They are who I would always choose to be around if I had a choice. But then beyond that, I thought, okay, if that's what I want, then I need to be the kind of parent who my kids really not respect as a mom, but really respect as a human. So if they have any challenge, they're going to come to me and I can actually process with them and maybe give them a tidbit or two that's really, really good because I've already been there. And so I don't care about anybody else being proud of me, but I do care about my kids being proud of me. And so that was literally the impetus to everything that kind of happened really quickly in my 50s. And so because, obviously I need to be proud of me, right? And with my kids, who cares if I'm proud of them? They need to be proud of them. But I often will tell them, I'm proud for you, So that was a huge driver for me. I didn't want our relationship to stay where it was, which is mother-child, right? Yeah. I realized that they're going to have to be my equal now, right? We're all adults. And so I needed to up my ante as well and really do something with my life where they actually felt that, oh yeah, she is, we're all equals. And it's not, oh, this is my mom.
Yeah. I love that. I'm trying to walk a thin line of being his parent now, but always letting him know that I can also be his best friend. So one day, like whenever he is 22, he'll be like, hey mom, you want to go do whatever? But yes, I'm looking forward to that.
How old is your son now?
He is 10.
And do you have one child?
Just the one.
One child. Okay. 10.
Yeah.
Oh, he's still a little baby though. It's just crazy. The one big piece of advice for anyone who's remodeling, do not remodel your house for your kids. That is the stupidest thing. Every time I walk through the playroom, which is not used, I think, what a waste of money, because literally there were maybe 6 years, where the kids were always there in the playroom. And then once they became teenagers, they'd be in the playroom if they were having a party, which I usually put a kibosh on. So then the playroom became a problem. So yeah, it just goes by so fast.
That's one thing I'm interested in knowing, because I feel like we're always told what we could be doing better. And yes, there's so much that we can work on. What do you think we're already getting right as women with ADHD or parents with ADHD?
I think we are the best parents because we have this natural creativity and curiosity. And so society teaches us that the parent is like this authority figure, yes and no. And I think most ADHD people kind of balk against that whole authority thing. And I think that's brilliant because every relationship is about power or connection. Mm-hmm. And we just naturally, because of our high empathy, we want to connect. And so, for example, and I'll give you guys the story just because if you have a child like this, just so you know, first of all, it happens to anyone. And second of all, it doesn't matter because I never took anything so seriously. I knew because he did some crazy things. And I knew, so my son was a rapper, and that's how he got himself into NYU. He didn't have the grades and he didn't have the test scores, but he was a really good writer, a really good rapper, and he loved social justice kind of topics. So he wrote this whole thing and did a rap on the Korematsu decision, which was the internment of the Japanese. He's a quarter Japanese. And that's how he got in to, NYU's music program. Ultimately, he got there and then it was economics and like he tried a bunch of things. But where was I going with this? I wanted to say that, I wanted to tell you the story that my son got himself suspended. No, not suspended. What's the other one where it's just a couple days? Yeah, suspended.
Yeah.
Not expelled.
Yeah.
He got himself suspended because he was a drummer and he was a freshman at this brand new high school, 2,500 kids. He had come from Catholic school, these little tiny, and he's a rapper, so he's kind of cool. And he makes friends with a bunch of seniors because they weren't watching the kids in this music class. And they had way too many kids. And so they would let the drummers go off. The seniors took him off campus, smoked weed, got stoned, came back, threw up in his math class. Okay, bad, right? Really bad. And my sister calls me. I'm in Silicon Valley with my husband. We live up in Sonoma County. So we're like 2.5 hours from where we need to pick him up. Yeah, worked. Okay, so his vice principal calls me, and I shouldn't have, I told the story backwards, but his vice principal calls and she says, Ms. Otsuka or whatever, we have your son. He's at the nurse's station. He's ill. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened to him? And she tells me. And I am just, okay, I called my sister, told her to go get him. And I'm furious. I'm thinking, this doesn't happen in our family. Are you kidding me? My husband is like always involved. He's more involved than I am. He's a better dad, We are, every step that our kids do, we're part of it. And so I walk into the house and I take one look at my son, and that's all I needed because I knew that he was beating himself up more than I could ever beat him up.
Yeah.
And my thought is always this: one day we're going to laugh about this. And so that's what I told him. And my son never cried, never. He was just a tough kid. And he just broke out, bawling. And he looked at me and he said, I think I need to go to a different school. I don't think that I'm doing well here. And so, we ended up sending him to another school. But to me, that was just like, don't sweat the small stuff. Things are going to happen. It is not necessarily the beginning of the end. And the thing with ADHD kids, though, is you have to watch them. So I'll tell you why this happened. And this was our fault. When he started as a freshman, he wanted to play football. And I'm just so against it because of CTE. And, he's already got, an issue with his brain, right? With ADHD. And ultimately, he was also diagnosed with dyslexia. So I really didn't want him to play it, but he really wanted to. I'm like, go ahead. They had a really abusive football coach. And I just noticed my son, and he kind of seemed depressed. He seemed anxious. He hated to go to football practice. And I just assumed it was the football practice. But what he had also asked was, I want to do really well in school. He never wanted to use the medication. He asked to try Adderall. So we put him on Adderall, and about 3 months in, I'm looking at him. I'm like, his grades are terrible. They're not better. He's so irritable. He seems really depressed, And so we talked to him about it. And he said, yeah, I don't think it's working. So we just pulled him off. Big mistake. And we pulled him off. And so what ended up happening is it took a couple months, but he pitched into a depression. So he was self-medicating because of anxiety and just trying to feel better. And so ultimately what happened, was our fault. But he was also, because, we were so, like, he could tell us anything. he also realized that, okay, something isn't right. And he, came to us and said, look, this is not a good situation. I need to be doing, I need to be somewhere else around, other students that maybe also want more for their life, that aren't, I mean, there were a lot of kids, it was socioeconomic, a lot of kids that really struggled in that school. And my son gravitates towards that kind of human because he's highly empathetic. And so, my point is simply stuff happens, especially with an ADHD kid. They can be super impulsive, but you have to learn. I mean, my thing was always, as long as you don't do anything to harm yourself, or you're not doing something that might harm you that is permanent, I'm not gonna, I don't really care what your grades are. I don't really care what's happening in school with a specific teacher. I mean, obviously, we want you to do well and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that you do well. But I really believe that a lot of these ADHD kids, they are literally barometers of good teaching. Because with my son, it could be a subject that he was not interested in, like Shakespeare, but he had a teacher that got him, that saw his brilliance. And I mean, she was responsible for him rapping because of Shakespeare, right? Mm. So she saw where he was brilliant and was willing to tell him that and then challenge him. And he would do anything to do well by that teacher versus he was gifted in math, but he had a math teacher who didn't even want to be a teacher, who was obnoxious and rude and disrespectful. And my son was always a problem in that class. So it really, these kids, sometimes they can be really immature, but they're also really wise beyond their years. And they are about authenticity. So if there is an adult in their life who commits to something and then reneges on it, whether it's a teacher or a parent or, a coach, they're the ones that are going to open their mouth and say, nope, that is not fair, right? They tend to have that justice sensitivity. They'll go to bat for other kids, even if it's against their best interest. And so I personally think those qualities are so much better than what friggin' grade you got.
Agreed. My kiddo got in trouble a lot in pre-K and kindergarten. And I swear every single time it was for taking up for a kid that was getting bullied. Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, please stop calling me with this. Like, this is not, I'm not upset. There's nothing to discipline here.
Right.
So now I love that he advocates for himself. I just hate that he's practicing on me before he gets to the real world.
Well, I know, because what we really want is, we want our kids to value what we value and act like we act. Yeah. Because life's so much easier for us. But that's the biggest mistake, right? We need to teach our kids how important it is for them to be who they really are and care about what they really care about.
Yeah, agreed. Tracy, this has been so good. I have one question, and then I want you to tell everyone about your website and your book because I went down the rabbit hole there. I have moms come to me all the time. I mean, all the time. And they're like, I love your podcast. I love everything, that you say, but it's really hard for me to implement parenting strategies when I also have ADHD. Do you have any tips for all of the moms out there questioning how to do it with ADHD?
I think curiosity is probably the most important thing. Like them, oh my God, I had all these like chore charts and, all these checklists and stuff we were going to do together, and they could earn, points for this. And then we'd go on I don't know, to a amusement park, or I could never follow through. So ultimately, I really think it's about sitting down at eye level with your kid and getting curious around, okay, well, why did that happen? And how do you feel about it? Like, do you feel good about the fact that you just had just broke down and completely emotionally dysregulated? Of course, we're not going to use that word. Or does it make you feel like, how does that make you feel in your body? And so what do you think might work better next time? Because we think we have the answers. We have the answers for ourselves. We do not have the answers for our child. But when we can get them to join us in trying to solve a problem that, first of all, they think is a problem, right? We have to get them to see that it is actually a problem for them. And then getting curious around, okay, well, what could we try differently? Look, this is the deal with an ADHD kid. The only way that you're going to get them to buy off, make it fun, make it challenging, make it social. If they're the kind of kid that, their social life's important to them. So are there ways that we can, this is such a gross phrase, but skin that rabbit by making whatever needs to get done fun, challenging, or social? Can we set a timer and beat the timer? Yes. Can we, I don't know, let them do whatever it is that you want them to do, but they get to watch a show while they're doing it? Can they invite all their friends over, and then maybe they can figure out a way that their friends can help them do this thing? So let's say you're stupid enough to build a playroom like I did. And, every time their friends are over, the playroom is a disaster. Well, how could they get their friends? Like, you have to be clever, right? How can you get your friends to help you clean that up so you don't have to do it yourself?
Yeah. We used to play a game, and I will completely admit that we created a competitive beast. My kid loves a challenge. Now he is a grade A haggler because of all of our games in the past. But one of the things that used to work is, I bet you can't pick up 20 toys before mom does or his friends. And honestly, that got our playroom cleaned up. So yeah.
Make it a challenge, because when it's challenging, it's fun, right? You're beating the clock, and everybody's doing it together. And then as you get older, like I do that for myself, right? Okay, I was able to do this 15 minutes before. Can I do it in 10 minutes this time?
Yes.
It makes it so much better.
Yes. Also, your tip in there about letting them watch a show while they do something is how I get myself to fold laundry, because I get to watch a show while I fold the laundry.
You watch the murder shows when you do it?
All of the murder shows.
48 Hours, Dateline, 2020. What the hell? Why do we all love those? Honestly, I don't like TV, but I love those shows. I just can't watch them at night.
Yeah, I think it's because it makes me feel like my life isn't so insane, like at least we're not stabbing each other after midnight, like everything's okay. We're doing okay over here.
My favorite ones are, I don't like families, like, because then that makes me sad, like a poor family, like they have so much else that they have to struggle with. And then on top of it, this, but I love like the rich families where the wife kills the husband. Or the husband kills the wife. And it's always the spouse, right?
Always. Always. Tracy, this has been so fun. Will you please tell our listeners how they can connect with you and, for the love of God, read your book, because it's amazing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, obviously the book is available everywhere books are sold. My favorite thing is to be in an airport and go and, look at the airport bookstore to make sure that they have my book. And I always sign it. And the reason I always sign it is I found out that if you sign a book, they can't send it back.
Oh, interesting.
I had no idea. So when you see author signature, they were smart. They didn't want you to send it back. And of course, my website, everything's on my website. It's Tracy. We just moved it back again. It's tracyotsuka.com.
Perfect. And of course, I'll link all of that in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
You're welcome. You have dropped so many gems for me today. I can't wait to go back and re-listen. I want to know if you have any parting advice, because somehow it's always what I needed to hear.
Parting advice. I have never met an ADHD brain that wasn't brilliant about something, right? And then the other thing that I would say is, if you are constantly feeling like you're too much and everybody's telling you you're too much, have you ever met anybody that's actually made a difference in this world by being too little? So start wearing that as a badge of honor, because we have too many people in this world right now, specifically in this country right now, that don't really care. And I think the beauty of ADHD is that we really do. When we find something that's important to us, we will go to the ends of the earth. We will stand up for people when it is not in our best interest because we care so much. And I think we need more of that today rather than less of it. So stop dimming your light. You are not. The other thing is, I believe also that all ADHD women are meant to lead in their area of brilliance. We struggle to be followers, right? You know, we talk too much. We have too many opinions. We want to do it better. We want to do it differently. And usually the problem is we're actually meant to lead instead of follow, which can make us annoying when you're supposed to be following, right?
Agreed. I love both of those. And yes, I do think that was meant for me today. Thank you so much for this. I've enjoyed it so much.
Me too, Danielle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. If there's one thing I hope you're taking away from this conversation, it's this. You didn't suddenly fall apart when you became a mom. Motherhood just removed the scaffolding that was holding your ADHD together. And that's not a failure. That's information. So many of us were high-functioning, overcompensating, people-pleasing machines before kids. We had systems. We had control. And girl, we had sleep. And then parenting came in like a wrecking ball and exposed every executive function we'd been white-knuckling for decades. Listening to Tracy is your reminder that you are not lazy, dramatic, broken, or bad at adulthood. You are a woman with ADHD navigating motherhood in a world that was never designed for our brains. And here's the part I really want you to hear. Taking care of your ADHD is not selfish. It's not indulgent. And it's not something you earn after everyone else is okay. It's foundational. Because when moms get support, kids get support. When moms learn how their brains work, they stop blaming themselves and stop passing the shame down. And when we regulate, reframe, and rebuild systems that actually fit, the whole damn household feels it. This New Year Less Chaos season isn't about becoming a calmer, more organized, magically regulated version of yourself. It's about understanding yourself. So if this episode cracked something open for you, if you felt seen, exposed, relieved, or maybe even a little emotional, I want you to know you're not late to this. You're right on time. Thank you so much to Tracy for this conversation. Be sure to check out her website in the show notes. She has many upcoming events. And I want to thank you for showing up, listening, and doing the brave work of unlearning everything you were told about who you're supposed to be. Don't forget to do all of the things for the algorithm gods. Like, subscribe, leave us a review. 5 stars, obviously. But so much more importantly, I want you to share this with a mom whose kid just got diagnosed, because guess what she's probably learning right now. That's it for this week on Chaos and Caffeine. I'm Danielle. I'll see you next time. Same chaos. For the love of God, I hope more caffeine and a whole lot more compassion. Okay, let's get real for a second. Parenting kiddos with ADHD is exhausting. And some days just thinking about talking to a therapist feels impossible. That's why I love TalkSpace. Here's the game changer. You can text or chat with a licensed therapist whenever you need. No waiting rooms, no awkward, hi. No forcing yourself to talk out loud when your nervous system is already shot. Just real support on your time in your space. If you're shy, anxious, overstimulated, or just flat out done speaking, this is life-changing. You type, they respond, and suddenly support is literally in your pocket. And the practical mom part? TalkSpace accepts most insurance. The average copay is around $15, and a lot of insured members pay $0. No insurance? Still covered. You can get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. So if you've been thinking, I need help, but I can't even, This is your sign. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com and save $80 with code SPACE80. Less guilt, more support. That's the energy we're bringing into 2026.